2023, I have worked as a sociologist for the Witness and Victims Protection Program in Ceará. In this panel, we will have three speakers: Gustavo Fernandes, Juliana Coelho, and Carlos Mourão. Each speaker will have about 7 minutes. After each presentation, we will have a questions and answer sessions with 5 selections questions to please leave your questions in the chat in advance. Which speaker will have about 2 minutes to respond, okay? Now, let me introduce the first speaker. Gustavo Fernandes has experience in human rights and protection basic rights. He works with a program that protects people threatened with death. He is a deputy coordinator of the Witness and Victims program in Mato Grosso. Gustavo will talk about Witness and Victims Protection Program, past and present. Now I give him to floor to Gustavo.
Thank you, Pedro. Hello, everyone. My name is Gustavo Fernandes. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to participate in this event, and I hope I can talk a little bit human rights. I can talk a bit the program, the Witness and Victims program here. So I have around 7 minutes, 7 to 8 minutes, so I'll intend to be didactic in my talk. So my main objective here is to explain the origins of the program in a historical and evolutionary way. So the first Brazilian model of the Victim and Witness Protection Program was born in Pernambuco, as another state here in Brazil, back in the 90s, like 1996, if I'm correct. This process was driven by the high rates of impunity and the difficulties in producing testimonial evidence. There were a plenty of murders back in time to avoid trials that were not solved by the states. That was a common practice back then in the 80s and 90s here in Brazil. So in 1998, the Ministry of Justice, based on the experience in Pernambuco, signed a technical and financial cooperation agreement with the government of Pernambuco to support the program. That was the first step, a huge step for us here in Brazil to combat violent crimes. That was the signature here in our country. The Victims and Witness Protection Program is based on the idea of social reintegration. And then you can ask me, what is social reintegration, right? So in a certain way, we take people out of the place of the threat and put them into new community spaces with health and school services, and far from the location of the threat, in a confidential manner and with the effective participation of civil society in the construction of supportive protection network. In other words, what is a supportive protection network? It's the civil society. To explain in other words, right? The program has the fundamentals participation of civil society in the Brazilian context. Historically, we have had several cases of human rights violations by state agents here in Brazil, like policy officers, politicians, and others with power, control, and influence here in our country. Violations that continue to this day. One of the major impacts of the program is related to the fight against criminal organizations. Here in Brazil, we have several criminal organizations with high military power and control over practically the entire national territory. To give an example, we have Comando Vermelho is one of them, and Primeiro Comando da Capital, PCC, is another one. It's two powerful organizations here in Brazil that control almost everything in our country. Just to give an example, there have been cases in which a single testimony, like one testimony, led to around 20, 30, 40 arrests here in Brazil. So the testimony here has too much value. So as cases like this happens very often. My friend Carlos will tell you guys more about it, but the testimony has too much value here in our country, and the program contributes for this. The program rise through testimonial evidence as an extremely important factor in the dismantling of criminal organizations. This public policy has been in place for about 20 years, so our law is about 1999, and we are constantly improving to new strategies, like for the protection and promotion of rights. We have many ways to protect, and I'm telling you guys, this story about the program is definitely one of them, like information, like study, like how to protect, like who to call. It's everything you guys must know about the protection. You have another ways to protect. Of course, the program has too many, is about 20 years of protection, but uh, being here to talk about you guys, the program, I think, is the most powerful way, information. So I think I almost 80, 90 minutes. I'll let the others to chat, but I'm think I'm at out of time. So I would like to thank you all for the participation. And one more time, it's a pleasure to be here, to be part of this. I want to thank you, salute my colleagues, my friends, everyone that's are watching this. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Gustavo, for their presentation. Now, let me introduce Juliana Coelho, as human rights activist, graduation in psychologist, master in sociologist. She's worked with resident and psychologist support for the LGBTQ population, homeless people, women victims of human trafficking, and young people in socially vulnerable situations. Since 2023, work a psychologist and a witness and victims program protection program in Brazil. Juliana will talk about the role of psychologists in care for protection, witness, and victim program.
Hi, everyone. And first of all, thanks to Valeria to help with the slides. And I'm very happy to present and to discuss with you about the role of psychology in caring for protected witnesses and victims. Can you change the slide, please, Valeria? Okay, thank you. And initially, I consider relevant to briefly talk about something so present in our work routine and care for people under protection, that is trauma. It is possible to state that people who are in a protection program are people who have been traumatized by violence, whether because they are victims or witnesses. Their lives are threatened. Therefore, here are some important and brief points about the understanding of trauma. First of all, trauma is not within a person. In several psychological and psychiatric theories, trauma is considered as something that is internally installed and needs to be healed internally. It is an individualized view that ends up blaming traumatized people. And trauma is politically and socially constituted. We can only understand trauma based on social historical relations that constitute and are constituted by people under protection. Singularity of trauma is different from individualization of trauma. Every symptom is historically crossed by intersectionality. It means that mental health and mental suffering are unequivocally crossed by hierarchies of race, gender, sexual orientation, class, religion, territory, among other markers. From this, we can say that there are populations that are more vulnerable than others, like Black people, Indigenous people, trans and cis women. And about Brazilian context of enormous social inequalities, we understand that social inequalities in Brazil come from afar. That is, since the discovery of Brazil through kidnappings, rapes, and genocides of Black and Indigenous populations. When we observe who the victims, witnesses, and perpetrators of gun violence are, we notice perverse updates of these colonial necropolitics. So we can also talk about updates of colonial traumas. And one of the most brutal consequences of these inequalities is the emergency of contemporary criminal organizations and gun violence in Brazil. Can you change, please, the slide? Thank you. And talking about the work at Provita and about the importance of psychological support at the protection program. It's relevant to say that people who begin their journey in the protective system present intense suffering due to the deaths of relatives, friends, and acquaintances, in addition to the serious threat that commonly extends to the family. These are feelings of hopelessness, terror, and lack of horizons caused by the traumatic event. The ethical political management of suffering in mental health in the context of gun violence and death threats, more specifically in the protective system, contemplates the respect for the unique temporalities of grieving, of trauma elaboration, from a perspective of non-judgment to avoid re-victimization and collective construction of strategies towards well-being and strengthening life projects, what we call a protective action plan. In our daily work as psychologists, in Provito we have 2 psychologists, we observe the importance of psychosocial strengthening of victims and witnesses. From it, people under protection can glimpse or not, in due time, new possibilities for reorganization and well-being in safe and dignified places. And in the routine of the protection system, people at risk face psychological challenges. Can you please change the slide? Thank you. So now I'll talk about psychological impacts of isolation, displacement, and identity change. And it's relevant to know that one of Provita's main safety protocols is the immediate removal from the place of threat, a necessary protocol that protects lives, but also generates strong emotional impacts. The displacement is not only geographic, but also of subjectivities, roots, dreams, family, and community ties. Name change, whether for the time under protection or permanent, as well as the construction of a cover story in which protected people construct a fictional story of their lives with the aim of not exposing real data that may increase the threat and persecution, causes, mainly at the beginning of the protective process, the feeling of living a false life, isolated from loved ones, a feeling of punishment, when in reality they are victims or witnesses and not criminals. These feelings, when not welcomed and managed based on respect for the suffering and the development of the protective action plan, lead to fragile protection and possible dismissal from Provita. So each protective action plan is unique. And as strategies for dealing with trauma, fear, anxiety, stress, and other mental issues, some of these strategies are, for example, we carry out qualified listening, crisis management, for example, in situations of suicidal ideation, panic, and anxiety. We develop activities such as carrying out religious rituals in a safe way, safe and escorted visit to the graves of loved ones, therapeutic writing like letters, poems, diaries, drawings, paintings, walks along the beach, birthday celebrations, picnics, and various activities with playful resources. As challenges, we identify the lack of appreciation of protection programs as a public human rights policy in Ceará and Brazil, a fact that is reflected in the lack of specific and confidential flow in the already precarious public healthcare system, as well as in the private one. Given this scenario, we make use of non-institutionalized networks, such as social movements, in addition to creating specific networks based on the demands brought by people under protection. And to conclude, I'll present a case study that demonstrates the effectiveness of psychological support at Provita. So this case is about a Black family consisting of a young widow and two children whose husband, father, was murdered by a criminal organization. In front of them, she reported the murderers and was, along with the children, threatened with death. At the beginning of protection, she was desperate, feeling guilty, repeating that she didn't know how to do anything and had numerous episodes of anxiety. The children drew graves on their skin and drew their father with angel wings and identified him as a star in the sky. When they felt respecting their great vulnerability, we worked on grief through letters, drawings, games, music, and qualified listening with her and her children, in line with the family inclusion in the public mental health system, protecting the confidentiality of data. Their pain, as well as their desire to move forward, grew stronger or weaker according to each process of working through trauma and the possibilities of new horizons. When they felt stronger, the family was allocated in a safe place, and initially they were in a safe and temporary place where they could not live as a security protocol. So they went to a permanent place, but a permanent place during the protection time. So at this permanent place, far from the threat, they could develop an important support network, effective community ties. They are included in health and education, public and private services, discovering new and dignified ways of living, dealing with challenges with perspectives for the future instead of a future of death and despair. Can you change the slide, please? And to illustrate part of what was brought up in this panel, I selected some photos that show the importance of mental health actions, fundamental to the promotion of human rights and the protection system. So we can see some of these actions by the photos. For example, funeral ritual in a safe place, elements of faith, children playing in a safe place, drawings, care rituals, and therapeutic writing. And so for now, that's all. And I thank you so much for the attention.
Thank you for the presentation, Juliana. No questions yet, guys. Okay, let me introduce Carlos Mourão, human rights activist and lawyer with over 10 years of legal training. From 28 to 21, they worked a technical lawyer for the protection program. Since 2021, he has been the general coordinator of the protection program in Ceará. In 2023, he began manager of oversized Provita in state of Mato Grosso. Carlos will talk about relationship between witness protection and reduction of international lethal violence crimes. I give the floor to Carlos Moura.
Thank you, Pedro. Hello, everyone. I salute my dear colleagues, Pedro again, Gustavo and Juliana. Thank you for the chance to discuss the link between witness protection and the reduction of violent crime in Brazil. The Witness and Victim Protection Program, known as Provita, is a critical public policy established in 1999. It protects witnesses whose testimonies are vital for criminal investigations and prosecutions, offering them safety and support to contribute to justice without endangering themselves or their families. When we talk about intentional violent crimes, we mean deliberate acts like homicides, fatal robberies, and assaults that lead to death. These crimes significantly affect Brazil's violence and mortality rates. In 2023, Brazil saw around 47,500 intentional violent deaths, most victims being young Black men aged 15 to 29 with low education, underscoring issues of racial and social inequality. Violence is particularly concentrated in states with high social inequality and organized crime, such as Ceará, Bahia, and Rio de Janeiro. One unique aspect of Provita is what we call the pedagogy of protection. This approach involves education witness about the protection process and offering continuous support, ensuring they fully understand their role. This careful and personalized approach has led to an impressive 100% success rate. There have been no case of protected witness being harmed while under the program. Provita also aligns with international standards like the UN's Good Practices for Witness Protection in Criminal Proceedings involving organized crime. This guide, developed by the United Nations of Drugs and Crime, offers approaches for protection witness, especially in a complex case involving criminal organizations that can threaten or intimidate a witness. The remaining practice recommends included: one, protections and anonymity. This provides physical protections and anonymity for witness and their families, especially in high-risk case. Relocations and new identities. In extreme situations, relocation witness and providing them with new identities can be necessary to maintain their safety. And the third point is comprehensive support. Alongside physical protection, psychological and legal assistance helps witness handle the emotional and legal aspects of their cooperation. Provita has adopted and adapted many of these guidelines to suit Brazil's needs. The pedagogical approach supports and educates witness through the process, ensure they are mentally prepared and well supported. However, there are some criticisms of the UN guidelines, like the high cost and the lack of flexibility for local needs. Collaboration across multiple agencies is also a challenge, especially where resources and networks are limited. Additionally, the guide is seen as a lacking in digital security guidance, a growing concern due to the technology used by criminal groups. Now let's look at some examples of Provita's impact. While I can share specific case details, I can highlight situations that show how the program directly fights crime. Recently, in Brazil, Northeast and Midwest, Provita protected witnesses who helped dismantle gangs involved in drug trafficking and urban violence. This led to arrests, exposure of arms trafficking, and even prosecutions of law enforcement officers involved in criminal activities. In Ceará, we are seeing the phenomenon of forced internal displacement, where people are driving from their homes by organized crime, but remains within the country. Entire communities are evicted and their homes taken over by gangs, making them internally displaced persons. Testimonies from displaced victims have been crucial in arresting criminal members and reducing violence in these areas. By protecting witnesses, Provita not only supports justice, but also upholds fundamental rights like housing, health, education, and community life. These testimonies help reduce crime and improve living conditions for victims and their families. In conclusion, witness protections is an essential for reducing violent crime and creating a safer society. Provita's success relies on ongoing investments and constant improvements ensure the safety of the witness and a more just society. So thank you, and I'm open to any questions.
Thank you for your presentation, Carlos, and all the early speakers. I believe your presentations here are very insightful. Now we will start the questions and the answer session. But I seems there had no questions. Yeah.
Yes, maybe we have no questions. I don't know if Maria or other person wants to have some questions for us.
Okay.
I don't think that's another question. Maybe we can
I not.
finish this panel. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I don't think we have some questions
Uh,
for the speakers.
uh, okay. I have one question. We have a question. One minute. Rafael Oroso, I have a question in the chat.
So Rafael asks, why do you consider that the witness programs are key to reduce the impacts of crimes? I don't, any speaker can, any of us can answer?
You can answer, Gustavo.
So as I was talking later, first of all, thank you for your question, Rafael. That was a great point. As I was speaking, and back in time, back in the 80s, back in the 90s, that were a plenty of murders of witnesses. So the state cannot solve any crimes. So nowadays, in 2019, we have a lot of crimes solved by witnesses. So the testimonial evidence is truly important nowadays because we can protect them from murders, from agents of the state, from criminal organizations and others. So nowadays, yeah, we can be, we can solve and we can help the state.
And I want to compliment Gustavo's answer just by maybe asking Rafael what does he considers to be impacts, because as Gustavo said, the protection programs, they can protect people that are witness and victims of death threats. And this is a very important impact. And I think that as a psychologist, but not just as a psychologist, I see it as a very important impact of the protection program in the reduce of some of other impacts. And thank you for the question.
Would you like to respond, Carlos?
No, I don't. think I have something to contribute. Well,
Okay. Thank you for the question, Rafael. And more questions? Just this one? This and more, Rafael. I can read. Also, I'm not from Brazil, but how does the witness program code work with the justice systems and the security authorities for the respect of or if the witness program are understand rankings in Brazil?
Another great question for Rafael. You're not from Brazil, but we can tell that nowadays, since the 90s, the program has been recognized by the state, then public authorities, the security, everything, the police. So we can work together. We can work with them. There was not, I cannot say underranked in Brazil because we've been about 20 years of program, and as Carlos was saying, that was never a murder and under the protection. So we can work together with the security, we can work together with the states, we can work together with all the public authorities to work. So I don't think it's underranked. I think we're on the top right now. Thank you, Rafael.
Any other contributions, guys? Thank you for the question again, Rafael. And the last question. Don't have any more questions. Okay. Thank you, Carlos, Gustavo, Juliana, for a presentation. I believe your presentation hit very insightful. I thank everyone for participation, especially in the speakers. I also want to thank you, Global Organized Crime Conference 2024, for the opportunity.
Pedro, I think we have another question.
yes, we have.
Okay. You can read?
Yeah, I can read. Valentina asked, hi, I would like to know, is the witness program work the same in all the territory, or is different between states? Here in Brazil, we have two models of protection, witness protections program. One is made about like we do, like Provita for society, and another program is made of enforcement police. So we have a different kind of protection here in Brazil, but this model of Provita we have in and maybe I think that is in 15 states in Brazil. Can you correct me, Gustavo? Maybe in 15 states in
Yes,
Brazil,
it's correct.
we
It's
have
15.
this same model of program in Brazil.
The other states, only to complement, the other states here in Brazil has the public security, like the state doing, not the civil society. So 15 states, we have Provita. Only to complement, we have only three more programs here in Brazil alongside Provita. We have PPCAM, is a program dedicated to work with child and children in general that was threatened by death, and to human rights protectors, ambientalists, and people that work with human rights. So there are three kinds of programs here, and Provita now is working with 15 of them states. Thank you, Valentina.
Yes, Valentin said, maybe we have studies that could share with me about the efficiency of these programs in Brazil. In Colombia, they are not so extracted to my knowledge. Yes, we can change
Perfect.
our contacts. You have our email, so we can change and talk about it in another time. Yes.
That's great.
You're welcome.
Okay, and more question, guys.
No, I would like just to complement Valentina's question about the, okay, now about studies, about efficiency, because as we work confidentially, this fact impacts at the production of articles, because we cannot, how can I say, spread a lot the work we do. So this is a very interesting characteristic of protection programs. And like Provita, we can say just some elements, but we cannot say everything because we work with confidentiality. So I think it's a very interesting question. So I think that it's not, how can I say, it's not because they don't have studies about protection problems, at least in Brazil. We have not a great number of studies, of academic studies, academic works, but because we have to work under confidentiality. So that's an important fact that impacts the production of studies about protection programs. And thank you for your question.
Are you closed or somewhere else? Okay, again, I thank you everyone for participating, especially the speakers. I also want to thank you Global Organized Criminal Conference 2024 for this opportunity.